Hi, kia ora koutou, everyone. Thank you. I class myself as an environmental planner. I train planners at the university. And one of the things that gives me greatest pleasure is to meet students who I've taught over the years. And today, at this event, I met someone who I taught, I don't know how many years ago, maybe 20, maybe more. And to see that she's still enjoying planning as a career is great. So, thank you. So, this is us. And there's a couple of things I want to talk about. One is that we need to value trees, and the second is we need to have space for trees. And we also need to value people, because people also need places to live. So if we look up here, this is a fantastic example where you've got density, and by having density you've got room for trees, but it creates space for trees at the back. So by having density you create space where trees can grow. So those trees have been treated well. This tree is very, very sad. It's tree abuse, and we do far, far, far too much of that. So we need to stop doing that. Trees are very special in urban development. They've been valued, but it's actually quite recent, and this is usually quoted as the oldest example of a deliberately planted and protected tree, and that's a plane tree from 1793. And this other poor tree, you can say it's valued, but it's been moved twice. You know, like, why not move the building? Huh? It's only been moved once. Ah. Right, okay. Because I thought it'd only been moved once, but then I heard it moved twice. Okay. So no, that's fine, that's fine. If we're going to have trees, we need to create space for them, okay? So what we can do is we can either have this one here, where we have lots of individual little spaces, or we can have a big space. Trees like big spaces. But what we do with those spaces is important. This is little spaces, and we've got really useless trees there, haven't we? Or you can have a big space and potentially have a really good tree. But as you can see, that's not a really good tree. So even when we have the space, sometimes we do it a bit wrong. So I came up with a formula. We need space, we need the right species, we need soil, and we need company. Because trees need the fungi, they need the other species, and they need other trees. They're not very good on their own. So we've got the medium density guide, and Yolanda talked about this. In principle, it's very good, and they've got some indicators of how we do it. Nice big space in the middle. But then it's like someone talked about the stamp trees. These are lonely trees. They're not going to do very well. And just by putting them on a diagram doesn't make them into a good tree. We've seen these examples. We're changing the way we build. So these are some traditional state houses, but there's not a huge amount of vegetation. This is a new development in Wellington. And what we're doing is we're densifying the houses, and in doing so, creating bigger spaces where we can actually have trees. And then we've already seen the traditional housing, and then this problematic development that's happening all over Australasia. This is the sort of development that's going up all over the place, these medium density houses, and this is directly opposite this Papai Kainga housing. The Papai Kainga housing, it's welcoming. It's got a little bit of space for trees in the front, and it melds into the background. It doesn't try and get rid of it doesn't try and overpower, and it doesn't prioritize cars. It's got a nice mix of vegetation. We can build dense and do it a bit better. In Hammarby in Stockholm, we see dense development done really well. And I think what we need in New Zealand is more looking at how it's done well elsewhere to try and change the perception that dense is an inferior sort of housing. We have had a number of students working for our project, looking at the sorts of developments that we're getting. This is one of our developments, the Tamaki redevelopment, and you can see here the original housing, and this is the replacement housing. It doesn't leave any space for trees or any biodiversity of any sort. Not that this was particularly good biodiversity, but this isn't any advance. This is another one where we're replacing agricultural land, again with this very, very dense housing. Density isn't a problem, but it's how you design it. So can we design it better? This is what Yolanda just showed you, but what I want to show you is this here. Where we've got permeable space, what we need to do is to have the permeable space as a larger space to allow trees. So this is Earth Song. This is hopefully going to improve over time. And this here is one in Dunedin where they've concentrated the development and left this quite large bush area intact. So it's how you spatially distribute across the site. So these are some alternative ways of doing it. But what is important about this is that with these alternative developments, they've all got the same number of developable units. So the developer isn't losing any money by doing it differently, but there are biodiversity benefits. This is Toyora co-housing development in Dunedin. And what one of our students did was she looked at what are the alternatives, and this is the standard one, but what about if you do it differently like this? And the red is social space, so you create a really good social space. You also, in the second example here, this is the biodiverse space, so you also create a space that has biodiversity potential and social potential. In this case, they haven't really planted trees, hopefully they will, but it has left a very good community garden space. But the potential is there if they want to plant trees by using that alternative layout. So we've got to move away from this sort of thing. This is alternatives for a site near the Basin Reserve in Wellington that a landscape architecture student did. And what she did was she thought about what's the important biodiversity on the site, what's the potential biodiversity, and then how do we work the houses around that? Not as most developers do it. Let's see how many units we want, see what design we have, and then put the ecology in afterwards. So I really like this one because what she did was she played with alternatives. You can have it up there and leave this space. You can have it more distributed. You can have it distributed here. And I think that's what we need to do more of. We need to play with the spaces that we've got so that they enhance the biodiversity and they leave space for trees. These are just some more that she tried out with different densities. So you can have this, which is sort of medium density, or very, very high density. Clearly, this isn't going to be particularly helpful for trees, but I think we need to play around with spatial form a lot more. So Yolanda gave some key points. I'd add a couple of extra ones. First, current developments, especially medium density developments, have generally done very, very poorly. They just put more homes on the same piece of land. They don't think about the spatial distribution. And the last one, use urban form that protects and creates space for biodiversity. So that's what we need to do. And I'll just finish with a really nice picture. Well, I think it's a nice picture. And this is Wellington. As you know, kaka were extinct in the city. And the reason that they've done really, really well is because there's a lot of trees still left. And this is my balcony. 20-minute walk from the city centre, 6 kaka on the balcony. But if those trees weren't there, the success of Zealandia of reintroducing kaka into the city would not have happened. Okay, so trees, very good. Thank you.